Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Katrina Indaway, and I am the Executive Director with the Oakville Soccer Club. We are very excited to be here tonight to bring you this Mental Health Matters event because it is very important that we remember that as important as soccer is to all of us, it is definitely more than just a game, and we need to take care of ourselves as athletes and as coaches and as parents and everybody physically, but we also need to take care of ourselves mentally. The last couple of years have, without question, been challenging, and they have made us all feel a little bit different at times. They've brought on some new stresses and some anxieties, or what might be known to you as unfamiliar feelings. So we've brought in a panel of very, very cool, very experienced people tonight to be able to speak to some of those feelings and speak to how they've handled them and things we can do to be a little bit more mindful and to ensure that we're taking good care of our mental health. This event is presented by over 20 clubs from across Ontario. We're very excited to work together in a collaborative effort to bring you, the player, this kind of interaction with us. I know that we're all zoomed out and we're tired and we're excited to be back in training, but we wanted to come to you virtually to get as many people as possible involved and to be able to record this to distribute later. So this event is recorded. We will make it available to all clubs and via social media later on, so everybody can take a look. I know there's some people who are in training tonight. I'm excited to be back on the field. So we'll make sure that everybody gets a chance to look at this. There is, as I mentioned, there is a chat function and you are able to submit questions that way. If you have questions for any of our panelists throughout the event, we will do our best to address them. If not, we will be sure to share some resources and other ways to find further information later on. We're really excited. We had a great registration response to this event, and we're excited to have so many coaches and parents joining us tonight. But we did make this event and selected our panelists for the athlete. So tonight we're speaking to you, athletes, about some of the common stresses that competitive athletes have sort of always faced, and then some new challenging things that have come up over the last couple of years. We have some amazing guests joining us tonight. So I'm just going to go over a quick thing with the panel and then we'll get started. So we have Matthew Arnone joining us tonight. Matthew is a professional soccer athlete with Atletico Ottawa. The CPL has played throughout the ranks and sort of all over the place, and is going to give us some insight into his professional career. Through Matthew's experiences, he did found an organization or a company called Mindframe. This speaks to mindfulness, which is a practice you can put into play in your day-to-day life and in your game play, on the pitch, off the pitch. And Matthew's going to give us a little bit of information about that. And teach us a little bit more about what mindfulness is. I think we hear that as sort of a buzzword a lot lately. And I personally don't really know what it means, so I'm excited to find out more about that. We have Dr. Tracy Vaillancourt joining us tonight, and I have to read Tracy's bio because it is very, very extensive. To give you a little bit of background, so Tracy is a bit of a guru when it comes to this kind of thing. Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in School-Based Mental Health and Violence Prevention at the University of Ottawa, cross-appointed as a full professor in Counseling Psychology, the Faculty of Education in the School of Psychology, and Faculty of Social Sciences. There are a million more accolades that come along with that. Dr. Tracy Vaillancourt is very experienced and very energetic and passionate, and has been able to share with all of us over the last few years. I didn't know Tracy personally before we did this event last year. And since I have known Tracy, I've been opened up to a world of new resources and way of thinking about things. So very, very cool, and very excited to have Tracy with us tonight. And Tracy also holds a Canada Soccer National B license and is a coach developer with Canada Soccer, and is a provincial coach and scout with Ontario Soccer, and a member of the Technical Advisory Committee. So Tracy's going to be able to speak to us tonight from her professional perspective and sort of her day-to-day job, and then her additional job as a coach, and give us some idea of what she's seen some athletes and youth struggling with in the last few years, and how to help identify some feelings and work through those. And then what's really cool is we're going to move on to a portion of the panel where we speak to some young athletes, some young soccer players that are very, very experienced and have some very cool backgrounds. So Chloe Doherty is joining us tonight. She is a student at Carleton University and a captain of the women's soccer team there. And Tracy was also just trying to get her into playing some League One this summer. So we are sure to see big things from Chloe in the future. Lucas Doros will be joining us later. He's a midfielder with the Guelph Guelph Griffins, a lot of G's in that sentence, and also plays in League One with Guelph United, which made their debut in the league last year. And Jade Rose we're going to speak to, who is an NCAA Division I soccer player at Harvard University. Don't know if you've heard of that one or not. And also has experience with the Canada Women's National Programs, U15, U17, U20, and ongoing. So some really cool perspective coming from all across levels of play and profession and coaching tonight for athletes. So really, really excited. Hopefully everybody gets something out of this, whether it's something that's just little and you can implement into your day-to-day, or even thinking of the perspective and experiences of other athletes. We're really excited to bring you sort of an authentic conversation tonight about things that people experience as soccer players and as coaches and just as young individuals going through the craziness that life is right now. So first I want to chat with Matthew. Hi, Matthew.
Hello, how are you, Katrina? Hi, everybody.
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us tonight and for taking the time. I know you're really busy, and we value how important these types of initiatives are to you, and I think that that's really awesome. So let's get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your soccer story and sort of how you came up through the ranks and how you ended up where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm born and raised in Toronto, Vaughan more specifically. So everyone on this call in Ontario, I'm sure, is familiar with Vaughan, Toronto area. Yeah, born and raised there. Grew up playing with Woodbridge, Glen Shields, Kleinburg, Unionville. I kind of really spread myself out across the York region, and ended up at 14 with Toronto, or 15 with Toronto FC Academy. So I had I was one of the lucky ones that was exposed to that type of training and trial. I was invited to there, and back when the academy was only 50 players, so I might be dating myself a little bit, but I was lucky enough to sign a youth contract with them, and that was kind of my first taste. That was kind of my first, I guess, real aspiration to be a professional. And I think being exposed to that environment gave me a bit of a head start, I think. And I'll touch on the physical journey itself, and then also I'll retract that and kind of work through the mental and emotional journey as well as we unpack. But after Toronto FC Academy, 18 years old, I decided to go to York University. Had a wonderful experience through the U Sports, 5 years of eligibility at U Sports. I won 4 OUA championships, which is awesome, and 2, excuse me, 4 OUA championships, 5 OUA league titles, and 2 national championships, which is really cool. Again, couldn't have asked for a better experience in terms of the results on the field, for sure. And logically, the next step for me, being a leader and a captain towards my graduation year, was to be a professional. I mean, that was the dream since I was a little kid, and you know, it kind of grew and festered within me. Started with, again, just something very innocent in nature. It'd be cool to play in a stadium with lots of fans and on all those cool things, and it became something very serious for me, and very much an aspiration, a journey, an ultimate goal type of thing. And that's something I strive to. And again, there were lots of struggles, and I'm sure we'll unpack them as we go. And that's part of my journey. I wear those like almost like a badge of honor, because those struggles make where I am today, a CPL athlete, and so much more. I'd like to say that I'm athlete by trade, but I'm so much more human than athlete. And yeah, the last few years have been in the CPL. Prior to that, I took a chance and I went to Europe. I spent a year in Italy, and here I am. I'm here to, again, speak to these athletes, these young people, and hopefully help them with my experience and my expertise as well.
That's amazing. What a cool career, and what a bunch of accolades that like you could really only dream of, I guess, as you sort of enter into that post-secondary world of play, and then being able to move on and into a professional setting. So CPL being relatively new to Canada. I think we're 3 seasons in, and so you've had some experience there. What was it like being a part of something like that was brand new, and then went through a bit of a transition? So from getting on the scene and trying to pick up steam as a league, and then bam, COVID, lockdowns, things are different. You get this opportunity to play to stadiums, and all of a sudden you can't play to stadiums. And so what was a little bit of that rocky road like for a professional athlete?
Yeah, I think everyone has something to take from COVID. I think everyone has aspirations as athletes. We all strive to develop and improve and progress. And much like any youth athlete that's looking at their development, I looked at my development in the same way. I had a very fun, enjoyable first year. I had a lot of success in my first year. I was with the Halifax Wanderers, and I actually was voted Player of the Year by the fans. So that was an amazing experience in my rookie season as a professional. So again, a lot of success right out of the gate, and that was awesome. And then when we think about what happened the year after, which would have been 2020, and we began this pandemic, much like everybody else in the room, I think that kind of stifled things, that kind of halted that progression, that kind of made my options limited, that kind of had gave me the opportunity, I think, to grow in a way that allowed me to work on more of who I was as a human, because we were literally stopped from progressing on the field and developing. But yeah, there were a lot of life considerations, right? The decision to come back and play for York after that season was literally contingent on, how could I make my life work? I got engaged shortly after that year. And so again, trying to balance Matthew the human and Matthew the player was the ultimate challenge. And that kind of pulled me in two different directions at times. And it's still pulling me in two different directions. But ultimately, I think it was the challenge that led me to growth. And I like to think of it as, in the moment, it seems very stressful and very, negative, I would say. But when we look back on those things, if we act and we follow our true self and we listen to our inner voice, we can hopefully look back on those things and measure a good amount of growth or a good amount of progress as a human and as a being. And I think I've certainly came through that. But a lot of challenges, and your expectations are certainly stifled when you play, you go from playing 28 games to a short 7-game season, right?
And there must be some, I think, what we're hearing a lot about, or I've heard about in our club, and I know my colleagues have heard about, is that there are some players, especially at the competitive level, that are having a bit of, anxiety about returning to the pitch, or a bit of uncertainty, or feeling a little bit of pressure, just because it's been so inconsistent for the last few years. Did you feel anything similar to that as you, again, like you said, as the season shrunk and then re-expanded and had spectators and no spectators and all of that? Was it sort of, were you feeling that at that level as well?
Absolutely. I think it's something that, again, when you think about your career, when you think about being a young player or maybe in a senior player and in a professional level, you kind of have this expectation that your trajectory is always going to be like so, right? It's always going to be linear. It's always going to be up and moving in a positive direction. But when those things are thrown out of whack, when unforeseen circumstances happen, I equated it very much to the way that I approached that was very much like an injury. I think when we're away from the pitch, we kind of lose our groove. We kind of lose our ability to feel comfortable. I think a lot of an athlete's comfort comes in their preparation. They know their comfort, their familiarity touching a ball, and also in the social setting, as you mentioned, being in that environment constantly helps us adapt to that environment when it's time to perform. And, being actually physically removed from that environment for an extended period of time, I equated it to being like injured and being away from the field, right? So when you get back, there's a level of training that we can do at home. We all know, we're all familiar with our Zoom sessions and getting a ball and working within 5 square feet of space. But there's something about the interaction. There's a whole ethereal experience to being in a team setting, to having that social interaction that, again, when taken away, it kind of strips away a little bit of that athlete identity as well, right? So again, it becomes a little bit of a transition for everybody. And I think it was felt, as you mentioned, from grassroots all the way up to the pro level as well.
Definitely. I think so much of being an athlete, especially at a competitive level, and I know our players will feel that way, is routine. And how often, because you're doing sort of the same thing, every Monday night and every Wednesday night, you have these training and sort of all these other pieces of your life revolve around this extensive schedule that you have in school, and how you balance that with homework and that kind of thing. So I think one of the hardest things to cope with for a lot of people was that there was the routine changed. And we didn't have access to what was normal to us every day. And that really caused some hiccups as we try to reestablish what that routine looks like and get comfortable doing the things that we just couldn't do for so long. When you mentioned your struggles and how you're an athlete and a human, and they're not just the same thing, and your identity is not completely being just an athlete, because there is so much more to all of us than what we do on the field. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that developed into you becoming interested in mindfulness and starting up Mindframe, and really what that and then maybe you can explain to me and everyone else what mindfulness is and what that looks like in practice?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to, again, if whoever's willing, I know we had discussed it, I'd love to take and show you guys what mindfulness is, because I think it's one thing to explain with words, but I don't think that it does it quite justice. I think there's another realm of experience that if we can sit and we can practice a few breaths together, for those willing, we'll do that towards the end of my spiel. But just to touch on where it started for me and why it was of necessity, I think when we look at human evolution, we never really, unfortunately, we're not very good at being proactive. We don't really get ahead of things before they become a problem. It's only until we kind of bump into a brick wall that, we decide that it's time to maybe look at a different alternative. So as I mentioned, I had a lot of success at a young age growing into the Toronto FC Academy, and it came with a lot of expectations. And there's a lot of expectations I think that we're all feeling now from external. So whether that be, again, coming from a positive place, our parents, maybe some peers, maybe our coaches, who see potential in us. And really that's where it starts, right? We see potential in an individual and a human, and we want to help them achieve that potential. Sometimes that can get convoluted in our minds, right? In our psyche, right? And so I alongside from those external pressures that I knew were people who wanted what was best for me, I had my own internal drive. I had my own internal motivations. But one of those internal motivations was fear of failure. And I think that's a dangerous one. I think when we think about Michael Jordan and we think about these athletes that use fear of failure to their benefit, to drive them further and to get them to push harder, we need to understand who the individual is. So understanding myself and understanding my family history, at a very young age, when I look back in retrospect, I was very much an anxious person. I think I had quite a bit of anxiety growing into that space. And as the expectations rose with going into a professional youth academy and all the expectations that went with that, I don't really remember myself enjoying it like I did when I was 8 years old. I don't remember myself enjoying football the way that I enjoy it now, or the way that I enjoyed it when I was very young. And I think that's a lot of that anxiety translated into performance anxiety on the field. A lot of that fear of failure crept in when I should be enjoying football the most, when I'm with my friends and training and we win a game, but Matthew makes one mistake. Well, Matthew's one mistake has him in a state of chaos until the next game, where he can somehow, some way try to make up for that mistake in his own mind, in his own heart, so that he can go on living balanced and finding equilibrium. So again, I started to convolute, as we talked about, Katrina, the Matthew as a human and the Matthew as an athlete. So my value started to become derived from my success or my failure on the field. And I started to develop my own self-concept or my own self-image based on what I was doing on a field where 11 other athletes are trying to do their best as well. And I'm, in a way, we're not really respecting that there are other people in our humanity. We're bound to fail. We're not robots, right? So that's kind of where it started for me. And again, I'll kind of give you the Cole's notes, but it very much manifested, it snowballed very, very much to the point where we talked about all those things that happened at York University, all those wonderful moments. And I have friends that I'm still friends with to this day that will be at my wedding, that again are lifelong friends. But when I speak to them, a lot of them have different experiences because of what they went through. So a lot of the anxieties that I felt weren't necessarily present for them. And that's simply because I was driven. That's simply because I was motivated to get that goal. And it became an at all costs thing. And it became detrimental, not only to my performance, but my mental health. So I think when I look back on that, I had very poor mental health. I think the way that I managed those things was very poor. And again, not being able to distinguish, some balance or find any solutions. Singular identity became my narrative, where I was only an athlete. And if I wasn't an athlete, what was I? I was nothing. And that's a very dark place to be, I think. And so what was lost along the way was, yes, performances for sure. But I think a lot of the enjoyment that is this athletic experience, when we start playing, it's for enjoyment. We love playing football. We love interacting with our friends. We love, all the successes and the growth that comes with that, socially, emotionally, and of course, the physical activity is important as well. But for me, it was my body was getting fit and my mind was getting, unfortunately, a little bit worse in terms of its mental health. So, I took to very much, I'm a kinesiology major. So when I graduated from kinesiology, I was very much interested in the human body and how it worked. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was this, the idea of how my own self-talk, because I was able to notice it in myself. I started speaking to myself in a very negative way. And that sort of set in motion some very negative physical emotions. So I started to explore that a little bit. I started to explore that mind-body connection a little bit more. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. And it served me two purposes. Yes, I was learning and growing. Yes, I was teaching myself at the same time without even knowing that I was more than an athlete. I had other interests other than soccer. I was very much this other person that I kind of had under the wing of the athlete for so long, and that became almost a healthy release for me as well. But what came from that is I went back to University of Toronto. I got a specialization in mindfulness meditation, and I began to explore that in my own experiences and in an academic field as well. And I sort of tried to bring the two together, where in my experience and in a lot of research that I've done, when we find wellness, when the human finds wellness, the athlete also finds high performance. So rather than thinking of one or the other mutually exclusive, they can be one and the same. And that's where Mindframe was born. It is a mindful approach to the athlete journey. It is a mindful approach to a human's journey or walk through life. And we'll talk about that definition that you mentioned, and then we'll practice. So mindfulness is simply, there's so many definitions. Sorry, let's start with that. And the one that I really like is from a very, very influential figure in this space is George Mumford. He wrote a book called The Mindful Athlete. I recommend you check it out. It's phenomenal. And it was one of the first books that I read when I explored this space. But his definition is in the present moment. So an activity that's in the present moment on purpose without paying attention in a particular way. So you might say, hey, what does that mean? So the way that I unpack that is, yes, we are present. So we're focused, right? We have an attentional focus in the present moment. So something now. It's on purpose. So it's not by accident that we kind of just happen to be here and we're talking, but our mind is doing something else. No, we're fully present with what we're doing, but we're not paying attention in a particular way. And that's the cool part of mindfulness. That's the part for me that became an almost very fascinating and exploratory. It was for me to go within myself, start to explore that. So what does without paying attention mean in a particular way? What does that mean exactly? Well, to me, that means curiosity. That means without judgment. So when I feel something, I don't judge that feeling. I'm simply observing that feeling. I'm creating a little bit of space between my emotions, and that lessens the power or the intensity of those emotions. And that curiosity, almost like I'm opening a book for the first time, or I'm picking up an activity for the first time. So that beginner's mind, when we do that for the first time we played soccer, we didn't have any expectations, right? So it became a pure joy. It became almost an exploration of what we can do and what we can accomplish. So that's kind of the definition that I like to think about. But a mindful act can be anything. So we're going to practice a few acts today. We're going to put 1 and 2 activities together. It'll only be about 2 minutes. So for those that want to participate, we're going to talk about tapping into ourself. And when we tap into ourself, we learn a little bit more about ourselves. When we do that, we can find a little bit more peace. So when we think about stressors, they usually happen in the past, when we worry about things that happened, or, I made that bad pass, or I worry about the future. What's my coach going to say when I get off the field? What are my parents going to say? What does this mean for my future and my goals? Okay. So when we live in this present moment for just a little longer, we're actually in the absence of that stress. We give ourselves a break from that stress, right? And in that moment, we can start to find some balance. Okay. So Katrina, do we think we're ready to start?
Oh, I think we're ready.
Okay, awesome. So I'll invite everyone, firstly, to stand or sit or lie, but we're going to focus on a dignified posture. When we say that, we want to be nice and upright, almost like there's a string pulling our head to the ceiling. So we have a nice tall spine, okay? And for today, I'm just going to turn my camera down. For today, we're going to practice it this way. So we're going to ask you to put your left hand on your belly and your right hand over your heart, okay? We're actually going to practice a diaphragmatic breath. So we're going to really use our attention to focus on our breath. So when we breathe, normally we breathe with our chest only. Today, we're going to practice breathing through our belly into our abdomen. We're going to pause, and then we're going to exhale, belly, abdomen. Okay. So we're going to do that together with our eyes open first. And then I'll invite you, if you feel comfortable, on the third breath to close your eyes. And then we'll practice 2 more breaths. Okay. So we're going to do 5 breaths total. So together, we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, good. Feel the belly, feel the abdomen, feel the shoulders, and we're going to pause. And then we're going to exhale. Releasing the abdomen, releasing the chest, lowering the shoulders. Good. So that's 1. Okay. We're going to do 1 more, and then I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. On we go. Belly, chest, shoulders. Pause. Belly, chest, shoulders on the way out. Okay. If you feel comfortable, just gently letting the eyes shut, feeling the belly fill, then the chest, then the shoulders. Pause. And then exhale, releasing the belly, the chest, and the shoulders. One more breath here. Abdomen, chest, shoulders. Pause. And exhale, abdomen, chest, shoulders. You can gently place your hands down by your side, leaving the eyes closed for a moment longer. Just check in with yourself, checking in with the body, checking in with the mind. Notice how you feel. Notice what you feel. Not comparing it to the last moment, not comparing it to the next. Just appreciating this moment. And on the next exhale, I'll invite you to gently open the eyes. You can begin wiggling the fingers and toes and gently including, again, back in Katrina, myself. And notice how you feel now. And that is a mindful practice. And again, it can be anything, but this is something that checks us into the present moment. If things are going well, we can appreciate the moment a little bit more. If things are not going so well for us, it allows us to hit that reset button. And it gives us the chance to respond rather than maybe be swept away and react in a way that's not pleasant in this moment. Okay. So again, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was a way that we can, tap into this moment and gain a little bit more balance, I think, with our emotions and our thoughts. And the last thing I'll say is, when can you use this? Well, this is something that I do as part of my warm up. So we warm up our physical body, but how about our heart and how about our mind? So if we can warm up all three things, then maybe we can perform a little bit better. Maybe we can enjoy that a little bit more before a test if you're feeling anxious, right? If you're feeling well, if you're feeling great and you want to check in and really appreciate that moment, we can use it as much or as little as we like. And it's very powerful. Why? Because it's the thing that keeps us alive. It's our breath. All you need is you. So Katrina, thank you for practicing with us. Thank you. I hope that was helpful, everyone.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I think, especially when we're feeling stressed or feeling like we have to get something accomplished, we forget to take a minute and it's as simple as taking a breath and breathing through it for a minute and just taking a second to refocus and shift the thoughts and manage those accordingly. So we have some great feedback in the chat with that as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of the insight. Matthew has resources and all sorts of things listed on the website, as well as Twitter, Instagram, that at Mindframe Fit. And I think there was something, a resource you were going to offer up, Matthew?
Yes, absolutely. So again, in addition to, as we talked about, being a mindful act being anything, I'm very happy to announce to everyone in this chat, everyone who's live, everyone who's recorded, if you guys are interested, Mindframe and Brahms United are sponsoring a e-workbook. I've been working on an e-workbook for Mindframe, and it's basically a template. It's a bunch of mindful practices for an athlete, for a parent, for a coach, and it's a blank slate for you. You can download it. You can print it out as many times as you like. You can use these practices, and again, explore which one works for you. So there's an e-workbook offered through Mindframe and Brahms United. All we ask is that you, either through the chat or through Melanie, the moderator, you just drop your email down there. We'll collect all those emails, and that'll be released later this month, and we'll send you a copy absolutely free of charge.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that resource with us. And for everybody who registered, we'll be able to access emails that way. And I think that that'll be super helpful. So thank you very much. And I'll ask you to hang out with Tracy and I for a few minutes. Dr. Vaillancourt, are you ready to chat with me? Did you take your breath? Are you feeling mindful?
I'm ready for a nap. Like, I'm so relaxed after that.
That's the most amount of breaths I've taken like in a row quietly for 2 years. So
yeah, exactly. I'm very focused now. So thank you, Matthew.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Nice to see you again. We did this together last year and that was very cool, and we received some very positive feedback. So excited to have the chance to do this again. So do you want to give us just a really quick intro to Dr. Tracy and sort of what your specialty is and where your knowledge lies?
So my area of specialization is primarily children and youth mental health, with a focus on bullying and violence prevention. So I know that kids who get treated poorly tend to not do well in terms of their mental health functioning. So that's my academic focus. I also supervise people who are going to be psychologists. So they're going through a program and learning how to be psychologists, and they're all amazing people. And then I also coach. I coach for the province. I've been a provincial coach for quite a few years. And I'm going to be helping out with the Canada Games team this year too. So exciting. I've probably seen a lot of the athletes that are on this call. I can't see their faces, but I scouted almost every game, it felt like, this summer. So I saw so many talented OPDL players. It was really exciting. And I also want to make a little bit of a shout out to Chloe, who's going to be joining us later. Chloe, I coached her when she was 14 to she was 16. And then also Jade, who's coming on, was on our provincial team. She was the captain of my team and obviously outstanding. And then finally, it sounds like there's like some kind of murder scene upstairs in my house, but it's because my daughter Ellie is doing her Zoom soccer right now. So I just want to apologize if you're hearing this. Everybody's safe in our house. My walls
There's
are not
nothing
safe.
bad happening.
My walls are not safe, but everybody is safe.
Perfect. Good to know if those books start falling off the shelf behind
Exactly.
you, everything's okay. That's a really interesting perspective that we have. We're so lucky to have you because of your professional and educational background, and then also for the insight that you have as a coach. You obviously have a history of producing some incredible athletes, as evidenced on our call tonight by Chloe and Jade that we'll chat to shortly, and tons of others through your tenure. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hearing and what you're seeing as far as challenges for youth right now, and particularly for youth athletes?
I think one of the biggest challenges is that everybody's worried that they're falling behind and that there's this really narrow window. And if they don't hit it in that narrow window, then it's never going to become, that they're not going to amount to anything in soccer. And let's face it, the kids who are probably on this call, and to me, anybody under the age of 25 is a kid. So I don't mean any disrespect to the young people, but they're probably ambitious players and they want to do something in soccer. And they're probably worried that they've sat out in and out for the past 2 years, and this is going to have a detrimental effect on their trajectory. But that kind of catastrophic thinking is not going to be very helpful. Everybody is experiencing this pandemic. Everybody has had starts and stops during the pandemic. And I think they need not worry. There's not, we call it in psychology, a sensitive period, right? Where you need to, for example, if you don't want to have an accent in a foreign language, you need to learn it before puberty. We don't have a sensitive period for soccer, right? Vanessa Gilles, who's, has a gold medal around her neck, started playing soccer when she was 15. So I think everybody can just relax. It's going to be okay. You're going to be able to get caught up. You're going to be able to progress, and you're going to do well.
That's really important information, I think, because that seems to be a pretty common theme, that everybody feels like they've fallen behind or they've missed out on something. And knowing that there's still opportunities and there's still room to grow, and that we're all going to catch up at a natural pace, I think is really something really important to remind ourselves. And like Matthew said, we're being hard on ourselves because we feel like we've not advanced in the way that we should, or that we're not doing things as well as we should. I think everybody needs to give themselves a bit more grace that way right now, and know that as things resume back to play and resume to normal, or whatever things look like going forward, that there will be opportunities to work your way back in. So I think one of the questions that we're getting, or something I know I've thought about too, is when you're feeling anxious, and maybe you can speak to sort of what that feeling is like, because maybe some players aren't quite identifying. We're saying anxiety a lot, and maybe some people don't know exactly what that means or how that might present itself. I know it can be in a myriad of ways, but is it normal to feel those feelings? Is it okay to feel those feelings? How do we manage that?
100%. Everybody feels anxiety here and there. And there's a distinction between having an anxiety disorder where somebody's diagnosing you and just having day-to-day anxiety or anxieties or worries or stress, that sort of thing. And for the record, we expect that most kids in teens are going to have a bit of anxiety during a pandemic. There's a lot of things going wrong during this time and a lot of challenges are presented. So being worried about that is natural. What makes it a little bit more worrisome is when you have distress and or disability. And what that means is that it bugs you all the time. You can't get it off your mind. It makes it so that you can't meet the demands of your life. You can't make it to school. You can't take a test. You can't talk in public. You can't go to soccer without throwing up because you're so worried. As Matthew said, you make a mistake and you think about it and you think about it and you can't let it go. You might have made 100 great passes in a game and you didn't complete one, and you can't stop focusing on that one mistake. Once we get over there, then we're worried about it. But on the other side, we're less worried about it. So I think what the athletes need to keep in mind is, I'm not saying that I want people to feel anxious or worried or stressed out, but a little bit of it is not the end of the world. It's natural and everybody feels that. And especially athletes, like what I've noticed is that they want it so much. So they tend to worry a little bit more than let's say those who want it less. And so I think these things are perfectly reasonable expressions.
It's good to know. I think that because if that's unfamiliar or if we're experiencing some new feelings, especially as we return to play, maybe some increased pressure or feeling all of a sudden I feel nervous to play soccer and I never used to feel nervous to play soccer. And why do I feel that way all of a sudden? It is normal to feel a little bit of that and a little bit of, sort of uncertainty as you return. But if it becomes an issue, or if it's like Dr. Tracy said, if it's eating away at you, or you're not sleeping, or you're not focusing, or you're not, then we need to look at maybe trying to work with that, as well as, I think trying some of Matthew's tips are a great place to start, and being mindful and trying to reset yourself a little bit and think, how big of a deal is this really? What other sort of suggestions do you have for maybe trying to work through some of those feelings for young people?
So sometimes you can't work through it alone, and you could ask your parents for help and they can set up an appointment to see your family doctor. So I don't want to ignore that end of the continuum. Sure. But for every day, one of the things, and Matthew and I did a session together not too long ago, and we talked about the cognitions, so the thinking of athletes. And the thinking of athletes tends to be a little too perfectionistic. They tend to be really black and white in the way they see the world. So they either had a good game or they had a bad game. It's never an okay game. It's never in the middle. Right. And I think we need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. And I think that we should reframe the way we see the world. So if we're seeing it in a negative way, we really need to work on a more positive pathway, more positive way of thinking about it. And there's another thing that's really this is beyond the scope of today, but sure. One of the best ways to deal with anxiety is to do this thing called cognitive behavioral therapy. And it really is about reframing the way you see the world. So if everything and the sky's always falling, you're Chicken Little, you're always worried about things, reframing it to be more compassionate and to put it in perspective will be very good for your mental health.
It's good to know that there's lots of different resources, and they sort of there are different steps you can take. If you take one step and it's not successful, or you're still feeling that way, and you can take another. And I think that from what you've said and what Matthew said, something that we can all do as people, but especially as athletes, is that our minds are very, very powerful. And the way that we think has a lot of control in how we feel physically and how we perform on the field or in school or in our friendships and in our relationships. So I think we need to give, as an athlete, we often worry about how fast, how quick, how accurate, and how valuable we are in a physical sense. But I think we need to think a little bit more about how being powerful in your mind can make you a strong athlete, as is just as important probably to your gameplay as your physical talent is.
100%, because you can become too tunneled. You can become too focused on that mistake, which then means, your body's stressed out. You've changed the way you're reacting in a game. You don't want the pass anymore. You're trying to avoid tackles. Like, all of these things are affected by how you perceive the game. I would just also argue, because I know that my time's up soon, so I'll just say this, that always try and think about it from the perspective of somebody else, because we're really kind to our friends. And we always say, oh, come on, it wasn't that big of a deal. We put it in perspective for them. We explain why it's not the end of the world. And if we could kind of take ourselves out and think about it from that perspective. So I'll give you the perspective of a high performance coach. And maybe Chloe and Jade can tell you that this would be consistent with how I coach. I expect mistakes are going to be made. They're young athletes. I love mistakes. I don't like a poor effort. I don't like a poor attitude, but I have no problems with mistakes, because the thing about mistakes is that's where the most learning takes place, right? Because we tend to over focus on them. We are looking at the person and the whole team and the other team, and we're putting this all together in a package. But when they're thinking about it, they're thinking about themselves, typically just themselves. They're going into the car with their parents who just primarily focused on their game and not their game in the context of everybody else's. So think about it from the coach's perspective. I'm not too worried about these things. Really, I don't worry about them at all. If you're not hustling, I'm going to be worried about that. If you're not paying attention, I'm going to be worried about that. But mistakes is not something I'm worried about at all. It's not, right, Matthew? It's not the World Cup final. It really isn't. We're not there yet. And so just relax. And if you have a coach that's too harsh on these mistakes, then come and see me. Give me a call, and we'll have a little chat with your coach. I think they need to be kinder about these things.
Agreed. And so I'm going to invite the athletes that are on the call, Chloe, Lucas, and Jade, to turn their cameras on and join us while I ask Tracy just this one last question. So Tracy, you are a high performance coach, like you just mentioned, and you're perfectly comfortable with mistakes and understand that things happen. One thing we hear a lot from players sometimes is that they were too nervous to go tell their coach that there was a problem, or that they're feeling a certain way because they felt like their coach would feel like they're a weaker player, or they're not going to be as good, or that the coach would punish them for that action. How would you feel if or react if a player came to you and told you that they were struggling with not just a physical injury, but maybe a mental injury of some kind? Would that make them any less of a player in your eyes?
Absolutely not. It would make them more of a player in my mind. It would tell me that they have the confidence to reach out. It would tell me that they have the self-presence to recognize that they need help. And also, you have to understand, like, coaches, we're lonely, like, at the end of the day. Like, we just have our assistant coach to talk to. We love it when the athletes come and see us after the fact. I loved hearing from Jade. I loved hearing from Chloe. So, I think it's, again, this misperception. Coaches want to hear from you 100%. And I welcome hearing all of the things that athletes want to tell me. I want to hear the gossip. I want to hear how they're doing. I want to hear it all.
That's awesome. So that's really important. So everybody who's listening to that, make sure you know that. And I think most coaches would feel that way too. And that they really, I think you become a coach and you spend so much of your time coaching because you care and because you want to make a difference. And everybody likes winning, and in a competitive level, like, that's part of the game. But at the end of the day, especially for our young athletes, no matter what the competition is, the health of an athlete is still the very most important aspect 100%. Of everything. And I think a coach is always going to feel that way. And it's not going to affect your field time or your minutes or anything like that if you go to your coach and be honest about how you're feeling, even if it's just a little something that's nibbling at your brain and that you're feeling like you're not. And maybe even just sometimes talking it out a little bit and just saying it out loud makes it less of a scary problem when you let it build up in your head over and over and over again. Just saying it out loud and having a chat with someone might just make you feel better to get it off your chest.
And also just add this final point, and I can't change what I don't know. So, like if you tell me, then I can do something to try and address your needs. I'm not a mind reader, so I won't necessarily know what your internal dialogue is. But if you tell me, I can help you with it. So it's really, really good to reach out to your coach.
Perfect. So make sure that you are finding somebody to talk to at the very least about these kinds of things and work through. But if it's affecting you, especially at a game level, it's important that you find a resource within your team, especially with your coach. And I think they would welcome that. Dr. Tracy, thank you so much for that amazing insight, as always. I'm going to chat with a few people now who you have seen along your path and help them along their path. Matthew and Tracy, you're most welcome to stick with us. If you have to hop off, we are so glad to have had you. But I'm going to shift over and chat with some of these amazing athletes. So Chloe, Lucas, and Jade, hi, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to start, Chloe, I'm going to start with you, just because I see you first on my screen, so that makes it easiest for me. Thank you for joining us tonight. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up? Where did you start playing? And how did you get to where you are now?
First of all, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Chloe. I'm from Ottawa. I started playing soccer as early as it can start, 4 years old, was picking dandelions on the field. And I grew up playing at West Ottawa Soccer Club. And then I ended up switching over to the enemy, Ottawa South United. I played OISL for 3 years, which was an amazing experience, which ultimately led me to deciding to go play NCAA Division I in Alabama at a school called Jacksonville State University. I played there and went to school for about a year and a half, and then I decided to come home and I transferred to Carleton University. So that's where I am now. I'm in my 5th year and I'm soaking up all my eligibility. And the Bachelor of Commerce program. And I'm super happy I'm on the soccer team here at Carleton.
That's awesome. Very cool experiences and moving sort of all over the place. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to come back to you with questions in a second. We're just going to do intros with our other players. So I'm going to move over to Lucas. Lucas, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really excited to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Hi guys. My name is Lucas Doros, and I started playing soccer when I was probably 4, in the Tim Hortons League, and then I just I moved around a couple of teams. I played at an academy, A&B academy, till I think I was around 12. I went to a couple of rep teams like Vaughan and Islington, and that's until I went to the University of Guelph, and I was there for 5 years. I recently graduated in December. Thankfully left on a high note, winning the OUAs. And while playing with the University of Guelph, I've been playing League One with their kind of sister team, Guelph United, run by the same coach. And that's probably the team I'll be continuing to play with for the foreseeable future.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on the big win and on your graduation. Very, very exciting. And I'm going to jump back with some questions for you in just a second, but I want to hop over to Jade. Hi, Jade. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Give us a little bit of your history and tell us about where you are now.
My name is Jade Rose. I grew up in Markham, Ontario. I started playing soccer at the age of 4 in the Timbits League, just
Everybody
like everybody
loves
else.
the Timbits League, yeah.
I then started playing at Unionville Soccer Club until I was about 11, 12. At that point, I decided to leave girls soccer, and I actually joined a boys team for the next 3 years. So I trained with an academy. up until the point that I was invited into the provincial program, where I was lucky enough to have Tracy as my coach.
Coach Tracy.
Yeah, I played on the provincial team for 3 years, where I got invited into our Rex program, which is now called the NDC program. And then was eventually invited into my first national camp at the age of 14.
Wow.
Currently now at Harvard University, I just finished my fall semester. And I'm thinking about studying psych, so kind of along the same lines of this discussion.
Fabulous. Well, that works out really well. I'm going to start with you with the question, since you and I are chatting currently. So you have a very cool career already and are still so young and have so much awesomeness ahead of you. So playing at the national, like provincial and national level are sort of, must be a bit of a next level experience. Can you tell us about some of the stresses you felt sometimes, or when you felt like there was pressure, how you sort of started to overcome that a little bit, or if you felt that way at all? Maybe you didn't, but if you did, what that sort of was like to be going into those environments and being like, wow, I'm representing the province and the country.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one thing I've struggled with throughout my soccer career is being a perfectionist. And in a game like soccer, like Tracy was talking about before, mistakes happen all the time. And so that was something that I struggled with a lot. Like, I very much saw my game as black and white. If I made a mistake, it was suddenly labeled as a bad game, and I just ignored every single other moment of that match.
Right.
And so I think that that's something that I've been dealing with, and I continue to deal with even at this age and at this level. I think another thing is just the pressure that I've put on myself about continuing on this pathway. I think that, you know, when you go on the provincial website, that you see like I think there's like a diagram of a pathway, and I remember looking at it when I was like 13, and it said like provincial level, U15 national team, U17 national team, U20 full national team. And so I think from a very early age, I got it stuck in my head that this was the pathway to the national team. If I wanted to play in an Olympics, this is how it had to look. And that is very much not the case. I think that, or I actually know that everyone's pathway to wherever they want to end up in soccer, or any sport for that matter, is very, very different person to person. We have like Rian Wilkinson, who ex-player, ex-coach for our national team, got cut from camps before she made the bronze medal team. We have, like Tracy was talking about, Vanessa, who didn't start playing soccer until she was 15, and now she's a gold medalist. And so I think that rewiring, I guess we could say, my brain into realizing that my pathway towards a national team is not always going to look like this. We're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be injuries. And knowing that I can have this end goal and that it's still attainable despite the ups and downs that may occur on my journey there.
Definitely. And I think that we think this climb to the top is the straight line, right? And it's really not. And I think that's really what Matthew said too, is you have to, you know, like rewire your brain a little bit to think about, you know, it's okay if it's not exactly the way you thought it would be, and that there's still lots of opportunity. And like Tracy said too, as we feel like we're behind, or we feel like we've, you know, lost our footing, or we've missed out on something, that there's still lots of opportunity to get back to to get on track and to keep going towards our goal. That's really awesome. Thanks for that, Jade. Chloe, I'm going to jump over to you and ask you the same thing, because you've moved around a little bit in your career as you moved schools and as you moved up the ranks. So what were some of the stresses you felt maybe playing as you went from playing in soccer leagues and then you went on to post-secondary school? What are some of the things you felt?
Yeah, so I didn't really start feeling any sort of way until I went into university, honestly. And when I arrived there, I'm this little naive teenager going 20 hours away from home, thinking that everything's going to be great and I'm going to continue playing and just it's a great life. But there's a lot of ups and downs, as Jade was saying, and I struggled with that, and I dwelled on every mistake, and if I wasn't in the starting 11 or if I wasn't playing, and that's something that's really hard to wrap your head around after you've played all the time growing up and you've had everything a certain way. So that was definitely an adjustment, and overall, I ended up coming home because it was not the environment for me, and it wasn't the environment for me to grow. And I had to prioritize my mental health in that aspect. And that was an environment where I was dwelling on all of my mistakes, and it wasn't a great place for me. So that's then when I came home, I really started focusing on how to transition my mindset and to change when I make a mistake that, oh, I got the next one, and that's something that doesn't happen overnight for sure. And so I do rely a lot on the mindfulness activities and meditation. I'm a very overwhelmed, stressed person. So definitely doing those sorts of activities before games, because there's so many emotions and excitement before that. I need to calm down and just kind of reflect. So yeah, a lot of that stuff, but it's basically definitely not a straight line, a lot of ups and downs. And it was a huge decision to come home. And
Absolutely.
I felt as if I'd be a failure at coming back. And there was always that side of it as well. So it was definitely difficult, but overall picking what makes you happy and like putting yourself first is most important.
How you feel is super important. So good for you for being brave enough to make that decision to come back. That's not a small undertaking. And like you said, feeling like you might be a failure or you didn't make it, which couldn't be further away from the case. You are obviously not at all. You have excelled in your career and you continue to be a leader at the university level and advance your career. So I think that's super awesome. And I think everybody else probably agrees. Lucas, going to jump over to you, and you did the university and playing in university as well as doing a League One thing. Did you feel some stresses or ever have trouble balancing sort of the athlete component with the school component, or feeling those kinds of pressures on and off the field?
Yeah, I would say like first going into university, there was a lot of stress, obviously. Going from rep league to university, you go from being kind of a star on the team or the star to just being a player on like a 30-man roster where you're going to be competing with people that are like 3 or 4 years older than you and have much more experience. So it was a tough transition mentally to be accepting that, I'm going to have to trust the process and kind of build my way a couple of years. But I think the most important thing I learned on like kind of relax and not beat myself up is trying to get like a life outside of soccer, not have my whole life revolve around soccer. That's what university is really good for. You're in residence first year with a lot of people who you just be friends with, and you can go have fun with everyone, and you can really just take yourself out of that soccer element. And I think that it's not an easy thing to do, but I think ironically this pandemic was the switch in my mind where it really went from soccer is like an end all be all thing to soccer is just a part of my life I like to do, and life is going to continue with or without it, so might as well just go and kind of play stress free and just enjoy myself every game.
That's awesome, and a good perspective to have. And Matthew spoke to that too, is having your identity is not, and especially when you play at an elite level, it's so much of your life is dedicated to the game. But and that also is a good point too, that the game changes for us all the time. And as every time you move to a new level, you go from being maybe the most experienced to the least experienced, or you're the new person on the team, or you're the youngest on the team, or you're in first year. And that, is a little bit of a different feeling when you're sort of at the oldest age group and you're a little bit more dominant that way. I'll ask you first. So what do you do to stay mentally positive and stay like in a good mind frame? Like what are so you said you developed obviously friendships outside. What else do you do to make sure that you don't let sort of the perfectionism of the game or mistakes eat away at you when you do make them?
I just kind of try to run down what that really means. So if I can make a mistake in a game, what does that mean? Okay, I lose the ball. Did they score? If they scored, that's bad. Did we lose the game because of that? Who knows, but does my life stop existing at that point? No, we'll just probably go on and train into the next game. You watch any game on TV with any pros, and even the most tidy ones like Xavi or Iniesta, they'll make a couple of mistakes in the game. It's completely natural to make mistakes, and there's no point beating yourself up for it. So it was just kind of a mental thing to learn that, okay, you make a mistake, what's really going to come down from that? Is everyone going to hate you? No. Is everyone going to not be your friend anymore? No. You're going to get kicked off the team right after the game? No. None of that's going to happen as long as you just put your head down, try to win the ball as fast as possible, and just work hard for yourself and your teammates.
Very good. Yeah, acceptance is a big thing, and knowing that it's, as much as it kind of sucks in the moment when stuff like that happens, is it definitive of who you are? Probably not. Jade, I'm going to jump over to you. So you've had a lot of different experiences. You've moved around. You moved to a totally different place to go to school, and at a very prestigious and very cool school to be at, I'm quite sure. But through all of that and through your experiences provincially and nationally and playing in D1, what do you do to make sure you're staying mentally focused but mentally healthy and taking care of yourself? What's important to you that way?
I think that there are multiple strategies, I guess, I have on the field. I make a mistake, I have some sort of strategy that kind of resets my mindset, that regrounds me. It sounds really silly, but I wiggle my toes in my shoes, and it's something that I use every single time, and it's a reminder to myself, like I said, to reground myself, focus on the next thing, and forget whatever scenario or whatever happened in that moment, to forget about it and move on. I'd say off the field, a big thing for me is having balance in my life. And like what was mentioned before, that soccer is not my identity, and that I'm so much more than just a soccer player. And I think that is massively important, especially being in university and having the academic, the social, and then the soccer side of it, among so many other things. And making sure that I have balance in that, and that in each moment that I'm prioritizing whatever I'm doing. So when I'm at soccer, I'm only thinking about soccer. When I'm in the classroom, all I'm thinking about is whatever class I'm in or whatever work I'm doing. And sometimes that does get overwhelming. And I think it's just, for me, the way that I deal with it is just having my moment of, I guess, emotion. Sometimes that's crying, sometimes that's being upset, sometimes that's frustration, sometimes that's being angry. And I think having those feelings is 100% natural and is okay, and letting myself be emotional. But then after that moment of emotion, figuring out a solution to whatever I'm feeling. So if that's being overwhelmed with my schoolwork, for example, having that moment of emotion and then being like, okay, can I make a to-do list? How can I delegate some of these things? How am I going to organize my time, and trying to find solutions so that I don't continuously have those moments of emotion.
That makes a lot of sense, and really good tips. And I think like feeling the feelings is important. If you're upset, it's okay to be upset. If you're angry, it's okay to be angry. Like we can feel all the things, and holding it in is not going to do any good. But once we've let it out, we want to be solution focused too. So I think that's a really great point, is feel the feelings and then make the to-do list or figure out how we're going to deal with that and go forward. I also think the wiggling your toes in your shoes is a super cool trick. I think all of us probably wiggled our toes in that exact moment to be like, okay, yeah, no, I feel that makes sense. But it's just a good way, a physical reminder to snap your brain sort of back into attention, right? So a good tip for everybody, maybe develop your own version of, well, go ahead and try wiggling your toes, or develop your own version of whatever that looks like for you on the field. Really cool tips there, Jade. Thank you very much. Chloe, over to you. How do you stay mentally healthy, especially when the pressure's on?
Yeah, so I have something similar to Jade when I'm on the field. With the help of my assistant coach, I remember specifically this moment, and I just could not get out of my head during this game. And she looks at me at halftime. She's like, what's something funny? She's like, what's something funny like that's happened? A joke, someone falling, like anything. And so she's like, do you have it? And I was like, yeah, I got it. Like, and so now if I'm like make a mistake or something and I put my head down, whatever it is, I just like kind of snap my head and I like have a little giggle and then I just go on and it kind of resets, same thing.
A little
And
reset, right? Makes
yeah.
you give you a little laugh in your head and you can sort of shake off the.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a little mindset switch. But and then off the field too, I think something that helps me a lot is a routine, especially like specifically a morning routine. I think that helps me a lot with stress and just setting myself up for my day on a positive note. And that has helped me a lot, even just like getting up a little bit earlier. And walking my dog, getting fresh air, huge thing. Planning my day to minimize any sort of stress, that kind of thing has helped a lot. And just to help with the balance, because the school, work, soccer, all of that can be a lot. So having a routine and staying organized helps me mentally stay sane.
Yeah, that's what it takes for a lot of us. And I really think if I stopped hitting snooze 15 times in the morning, then I got a morning routine that I would probably be functioning a lot better every day too. So I'm going to take your advice, Chloe, and give that a shot. I want to ask as our final, sort of the final question for this round. What advice would you want to give to some young athletes who are maybe headed towards post-secondary or looking to continue to play competitively? What's a quick piece of advice you might give someone?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to not be shy, to ask questions for feedback or how to improve, that kind of thing. Don't let feedback or criticism discourage you. That kind of thing is super helpful, and everyone around you is trying to help you succeed and move on to achieve your goals and your dreams. So it can be hard when you're young to hear something like that and let it not discourage you, but everyone around you is trying to help you succeed. So that's super helpful. And also the extra work that you do off the field or on the field will pay off one day. And that's something that's super important to keep in mind. And that if you truly playing post-secondary, for example, if that's truly a goal for you, that extra time and energy and sacrifices that you're making on a daily basis will pay off one day.
Awesome. Great advice. Lucas, over to you. A piece of advice for young athletes headed towards this post-secondary / next level playing career. What do you think?
One thing I will say is that when you do enter post-secondary, it's good to know that this team is going to be something like you've never seen before. It's going to be way more connected than you're used to your regular rep league, where you guys just, drive to practice twice a week and then play on the weekend. For a post-secondary, it's more or less training every day and workouts every day. And you guys will like get to know each other. And there's going to be people who, are 18 and then people like me who are 22. But the thing is, we all will get along and we'll all like operate kind of like a family. And you should never feel intimidated by these older players. I know when I first entered my first year, I was like, a little kid, and I was looking at these like big guys, and I was kind of intimidated by them. But as long as you just kind of know that you're all on the same goal, and that's to win as a team and kind of help the university achieve their goals, then it'll make that transition way more smoothly.
Makes sense. Remember, everybody had a first day once too, and everybody was 18 once too, and everybody had their first experience playing for a professional team once too. And so it's okay to be a beginner, even when you're at a high level of things. We all have to begin things again. Awesome. Thanks for that, Lucas. Jade, over to you. Some advice that you have for some players who are striving to play at that post-secondary and at the provincial and national level and sort of follow in your footsteps. What advice would you give?
I think the one thing I would say is to be authentic. I think whether it's being recruited to play, applying to universities, or even when you get to university trying to make friends, I think it's very easy to get lost in what you think people want from you. And it's very easy to kind of become someone that you're not necessarily for the sake of pleasing others. And so I would just say to stay authentic whether it's on the field, like you go to provincials, and I remember my mom telling me, like, you don't know what they're looking for. And so play your game, be the player that you are. And if you're meant to be on the team, you're going to be on the team. If you have what they're looking for, you'll know. I think going into those tryouts, you want to get noticed, you want to be the best player. And so a lot of players go in and be like, and think, I'm going to be messy today. And it actually does them a disservice. So I think just be true to who you are, and everything will work out.
I love that. And Tracy confirmed in the chat that you were exactly what they were looking for at provincial tryouts. And there's really nobody easier to be than yourself. So I think in all, Chloe's absolutely, or Jade's absolutely right, in all sort of aspects of life, being your authentic self is going to probably yield the best results every time. So lean into that. Okay, final question in 10 seconds or less, starting with you, Jade. What do you love about soccer?
Oh my gosh, I think everything that it's taught me. I've learned life through this sport.
I love that. Awesome answer. Lucas, over to you. 10 seconds or less. What do you love about soccer?
Love the pictures I get. No, I'm kidding. I like the kind of familyness of it. You really just become, you get to meet a lot of new people, and you get really to make some special bonds.
That's amazing. Yeah, being a part of something is really cool. Chloe, what do you love about soccer?
It's my escape from everything. Whatever is going on in my life, I know that as soon as I step on the pitch, all is good.
I love that. Tracy, what do you love about soccer?
I love that I get to work with athletes like Chloe and Jade, and I love that I get to influence them. And I think that's why Jade wants to go into psychology. I love that part, right, Jade? It has everything to do with Dr. Tracy.
Absolutely.
But seriously, like Lucas was saying, it's a family. I love that part of it.
That's awesome. Matthew, what do you love about soccer?
I think what I love about soccer most is that I think no matter what, and our panelists are a microcosm or a small snippet of what this means, but success looks different to everybody. And I think success is achievable in this sport for everybody, regardless of, age, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of height, regardless of physical stature, regardless of our context in our minds and in our hearts and what we're dealing with. Soccer has a different meaning to everybody. And I think that's what makes it beautiful, because we're all joined in union. We're community, as Lucas mentioned, as Tracy mentioned, and it's all under this umbrella of love and joy. And I think it's a way that can unify people. Sport in general does that, but football has very much done that for me. And I really am fascinated by how people of all different walks of life, of all different walks of this human body, find success in their own way. And I think that's very special.
That's awesome. What I love about soccer is it gives us the opportunity to do things like this. We are, in fact, one giant family in this conversation with our amazing panelists tonight, as well as the 20 plus clubs that got involved and all the people who will watch this after the fact. I think that what we create in our sport and in the community of our sport is extremely special. And for the people tonight who came onto this call and took the time to watch and took the time to contribute, our panelists really show that we do care about each other and each other's wellness and each other's success. So we are lucky to be a part of something that's so incredible in this world. A lot of cool things are happening with soccer right now in Canada. They always have been, but people just happen to be paying a little bit more attention right now. We've got gold medalists. We are headed to the World Cup pretty much almost. Really, really exciting. CPL is running. Support your local CPL team. Get involved with soccer at all levels and make sure that you are helping to grow our game, because this is a really exciting time for all of us. Tracy, Jade, Lucas, Chloe, Matthew, can't thank you enough for your time tonight and your contributions. You guys are all incredible. To our young athletes, we are so proud of you and so excited to see what you go on to do, because we know it's going to be amazing. I want to give a shout out to Melanie Bradley at Brampton United and Samantha Cockell from Burlington Soccer Club, who worked to put this event together tonight, to create the graphics, to reach out to these panelists and to make things happen. These two amazing females worked really, really hard behind the scenes to make tonight happen. I want to thank every club that shared this with their players and coaches for being a part of something that's really, truly so awesome in the soccer community. And we're going to send out some information and some follow-up information and resources after the fact. I'm sure you can find all these amazing people, athletes on Twitter, Instagram, social media handles. And we hope everybody got something out of tonight, even if it was just something little. I think the message is remember to sort of reset your brain sometimes and take a deep breath, like Matthew had taught us earlier, all the way in, all the way out, feel it in your body, and take some time to refocus. Take good care of yourselves physically and mentally. Turn off the TikTok, go to bed earlier tonight, get away from the screen time a little bit. Really excited that we've returned to play and we're back on the field, hoping for good things this summer. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I invite you all to stay well, stay in touch, and we can't wait to do this again next year. And hopefully our panelists will join us again for cool stuff in the future. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight for this Mental Health Matters event, because soccer is absolutely more than just a game, especially to our community here in Ontario. So thank you, take care, and have a great night.